pushing.
Green's on.
Green on.
And that's green. It's on.
Okay.
When you put
By the public. So just a little bit about this process is actually they just really kind of started their interview process. So it started about, well, I guess it's 3 hours ago where they met with the PD staff. They have this today, and then tomorrow really is their formal interviews with 3 different panels for them to interview with. So really looking forward to seeing how it goes, and I'm assuming after tomorrow you all will be completely exhausted and put you through the whole interview process. But thank you again. Obviously, it's a very important decision for the community. The police chief position is one that, as I look forward to, we're going to make sure that there's a lot of good community support in regards to what their knowledge is. And I know you probably read it in the newspaper and what we're looking for, and really excited to get this started. Over here, we have Greg Nelson. He is with Mosaic Public Partners. They were the executive recruitment firm that assisted us in this search, and Greg is actually a former police chief himself. So, and then I think your partner also as well here, Brian, who also is a former police chief. So picking them was very strategic in making sure that we had connections that were in the police chief circles that could get us the best qualified candidate. And I think they've done a great job in providing us the candidates to go through. So I will kick it over to Greg in a second. He will be the moderator. He will be the ones asking the questions. We did receive questions from the public. We did have to ensure and filter to make sure that they were all appropriate because of employment laws and HR. So if maybe there was a question that might have been submitted and it doesn't get read, that probably is the reason why we had to do it. We're wanting to make sure that we are equitable in the questions and that we're all following policies and procedures. But before I go over to Greg, I'll give it to Clancy just to provide any housekeeping items and kind of things and how we can continue to stay interactive. Clancy?
Hi, everybody. I'm going to speak here just so folks online can hear me. I hope I met everybody. I think I did coming in the door. So thank you so much for your participation tonight and for being here and helping out with this process. And thank you very much to those of you who submitted questions online. That was a huge help in this town hall. So thank you. I do want to introduce Olivia DePablo. We are talking about language justice, and we want to make sure that we are open to all community members joining us and inclusive with that in mind. I'm just going to bring Olivia up to introduce herself.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Olivia De Pablo. I am the Language Justice Coordinator under the Good Food Collective, a nonprofit organization in town. And today I want to thank the City of Durango for opening spaces for multilingual processes and access to language and be able to speak the language of the heart. I am going to say the same stuff in español. Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Olivia De Pablo, soy la coordinadora de Justicia y Lenguaje bajo el programa de non-profit de The Good Food Collective. Esta noche estoy aquí para hacer interpretación simultánea. Por favor, déjenme saber si necesitan interpretación. Muchas gracias a la ciudad de Durango por permitirnos abrir espacios multilingüajes y poder hablar el idioma del corazón. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of other things. I think I attacked you all when you came in the door about the Scan Me QR code here. So after you hear from all the candidates at the close of the evening, if you could take a moment, there's 5 questions. What were your overall impressions of all these candidates for each of them? So if you could provide us with your thoughts there, that's super helpful. We want to hear from you. We're gonna, you'll have about until tomorrow morning to submit that feedback before we start to synthesize all that. And then over here, since you signed in, you'll get an email asking us how we did tonight as the city, as an organization, in hosting this. So if you wouldn't mind giving us your feedback there as well, it comes in very, very handy in our efforts and how we're doing when we're asking the public for their feedback. So thank you. Couple other things I just want to put on your calendar. April 30th, we have the Police Department City Hall project. Interior conceptual design is being presented. That's at the library at 5:30 to 7:30. We're also doing a virtual one of those. The same thing, it's a repeat, just online, 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock on May 2nd, Thursday, May 2nd. So you'll all probably get reminded via email now that I've got your email address. So thank you. And with that, I'll let you take it over, Greg. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Clancy. Thank you, candidates, and thank you for everyone that really showed the dedication to come out tonight and listen to tonight's event. We're going to have a series of questions fielded by the candidates. We have about an hour of content, and the questions are timed as such so that we can all be done, so you all can get on with your day, but also importantly that these candidates can get rested up for a big day of interviews tomorrow. So our first question will be directed to all candidates, and we will go in order from Mr. Current across the dais to Mr. Camacho, and that is just simply to introduce yourself. So please tell us about your background and your experience, especially as it relates to the Chief of Police position, and why do you want to be the next Chief of Police for the City of Durango?
Thank you, Greg. My name is Bryce Current. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out through some really tough questions. You know, the level of, there's some pretty smart people in this city and they're very involved. See a lot of good faces that come to our community forums, and thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Bryce Current. I've been your deputy chief for almost 5 years. And it's been an absolute pleasure to serve in this community. A community that, as I said earlier, that cares so much, and there's so many people that are volunteering and helping, and I've never quite seen a community with so many programs and so many folks that are helping us all the time and partnering with us. I retired from San Juan County Sheriff's Office for 19 years and came here, and I've been here for almost 5 years as the deputy chief. Throughout my tenure, I started undercover narcotics and detectives, and I went, I ran some SWAT teams and worked with community members to problem solve in many crime initiatives, and you're gonna hear a lot of the same thing from all of us, things that we've done. What's unique probably about me is I moved into professional standards, and that's where I found a home towards the end of my career. And that's where I thought it was most important to, I was just talking with Chris out here about trust and how trust is the fuel of any police department, and any community member or community out there basically needs to agree to be policed by the community. And, you know, I learned halfway through my, the beginning of my career that it's not about telling the public how we can protect them, but listening to how the public wants to be protected, and really police with community-based values. And that's utilizing the values that the community has. And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of listening, and a lot of listening for understanding, to really understand what those values are and how the community wants to be policed. And I focused on, you know, internal affairs and professional standards because that trust was so vital, and realized that we needed to take these police departments from, yes, at times corrupt, to good, to great, and felt like I came here to Durango, Colorado, and work with the chief to take a good police department to a great police department where it's at right now. Culture drives everything, and this police department has a very good culture and works with the community, and I want to be a part of that moving forward.
All right, Jen Diederich.
Sorry, I'm the short candidate. I'm going to move it down. I'm Jen Dieterich. I'll admit I'm short. I have 23 years, mostly in Salt Lake City Police Department. Same thing. We've all done so much on this panel. I can't tell you anybody up here who isn't amazing. I did 10 years working as an officer, detective, undercover, things like that, because I really I wanted to understand exactly what officers do before, and I actually really never planned to promote. I just really enjoyed being an officer at the time. And then, of course, I made sergeant. One of my funnest jobs doing that, of course, I was a detective sergeant and things like that, but I was in our training division. One of the best parts of that is you get to take a new officer and you get to see them change into like the person who's going to help guard the community from someone who maybe was a little afraid to do what they were doing, and you got to see some really cool stories that way. I became a lieutenant after about 8 years of being a sergeant, and the hardest assignment I ever did is I had the First Amendment activities for the George Floyd riots. I did that for 6 months, and I hope that never happens here. But I can honestly say it was the hardest and the best lesson I ever learned. I really, really, truly started to understand more about policing and the trust, like he was talking about, and what was really going on in the world, and to understand really how I just always kind of thought everybody liked us, you know, and I guess I wasn't so right. And so I got a great education out of that. The best assignment I ever had was working with our motors. And if they were here right now, it was the funnest thing in the world because I got to do events with them, and I got to work with people of everybody. The LDS Church in Utah does great big events there. I would work with them, and then the next week we're working with the Pride people doing their parade and all of the events they do. And then I also got to work with BLM quite a bit. I got to know people in that area and the Jewish community during December months, things like that. So it was fun to get to know more of the community that way through the events. And that's the one thing I really bring here is I know you guys have a lot of events that you all attend, but also our people are coming into from out of state. And I really enjoy that type of thing. Maybe I'm crazy, but I do. I love planning for that. And my goal is that if they don't ever hear about my name through those, then it was a great success because no one got hurt, right? A little bit about me. I'm single, so that's part of the reason I want to come here. I've been in Utah most of my life, and I love this place. My dad brought us here when I was a kid, and when the job came up online, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that place. It was cool, you know? Really beautiful mountain town, and I'm used to that being from Utah. I love the mountains. I like the laid back here. I think I went to Ska Brewery last night. Cool little place, like just people sitting around telling me where to go live. You know, it was cool. I was asking, like, where do I live if I move here? I don't know where I'm going. And so that was fun. And then the biggest thing that's about me is I'm a huge animal rights person. I adopt animals. I try and help get animals adopted. If I could have a farm full of rescue dogs, I would. So there's a little bit about me.
Good evening. I'm going to keep this pretty close to my mouth because if I move it down to my heart, you're going to hear my heart beating very loud. But nonetheless, I'm grateful and humbled to be here, especially amongst you all. I'm about as homegrown as Bryce. I live just across the border in La Plata, New Mexico. And so as a deputy chief of Farmington for 22 years, I've learned a lot. But before I get into that, I'll tell you a little bit more about my personal life. I'm married 27 years. I love my sweetheart. We have 5 children, 2 daughters, a son, and 2 daughters. And we're a very active family, and life takes us in a lot of different directions, and I understand work-life balance very well and the importance of it and being able to provide for a family, but also to serve a community. We've been torn in many different directions, especially during COVID, because my wife's a nurse. And so I understand the work-life dichotomy and what it brings and entails. I graduated from Kirtland Central High School as a youth, and I currently still reside where I reside in La Plata, New Mexico, we're cattle ranchers on the side. I have a degree in animal science from Brigham Young University, and that's what's unique about me from these other candidates. But I also have a master's degree in public safety, and I enjoy life in law enforcement, or I wouldn't do it. And I know that it's a balance test in so many different areas. And moving into my career, and I'm not going to go from 2002 to now, but as a sergeant, I was put in the position of taking on the role of community policing, and I understand the value and the balance that is necessary in serving the community and understanding their needs and where the issues are and how to communicate and dialogue with community members to help mitigate problems, to help resolve issues. There are some similarities between Farmington and Durango. You have a homeless issue. We have a homeless issue. I've seen firsthand some of the benefits of working collaboratively with different entities, different businesses, different government institutions, and also just different private institutions to help people bring people out of homelessness and into productive citizenry. It's such a wonderful thing to see. Then I moved into a realm of being lieutenant over professional standards for several years, and that amplifies and helps you understand even more the importance of what Bryce already mentioned, and that's, making sure that internally and externally you're conveying those things that show that you as an agency are focused upon trust and maintaining that trust through transparency. I think some other things that are unique to my tenure as a captain and deputy chief, more recently as a deputy chief, our chief found himself out of town last year in 2 significant events. And I found myself taking the helm of 2 separate shootings, one where we went to the wrong address, and I have to tell the individual, we're the ones that shot your husband. I understand that there are issues from time to time, but I also believe in ownership and being transparent. The other one was a mass shooting where we had 3 elderly ladies and 2 officers shot, and my chief was out of town again. And so I've been on a roller coaster occasionally when events come different ways, different times, and it puts you through different stresses in different ways, but I've weathered those. And I think that's one thing that is unique about where my service has taken me as a deputy chief. There's others I could mention. Moving into one of your values, and that's innovation. I've recently spearheaded a multi-million-dollar project in bringing in a real-time crime center, which started a unique chain of events all across New Mexico. We have other agencies in Roswell, Las Cruces, Portales, Rio Rancho asking us how we did it, why we did it, how it's working, what it's doing for our community, what it's doing for our agency. And it's just been amazing. And so I believe as a chief of police for Durango, you build upon what's already there. You can't be a maintainer, you must be a builder. You must be able to work with the other departments within the city, which was what I had to do in spearheading that project. It's not a one-dimensional view. Everybody benefits from it, from Farmington Electric Utility to IT to the citizens. It's a collaborative effort when you work with the community members instead of against them. And when you have those meaningful dialogues with them, it's amazing what you can do when you work together. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Burt, and I want to echo some of my partners up here and thank you all for coming. It speaks volumes of how this community prioritizes law enforcement, how this community prioritizes public safety. So thank you all very much for taking time out of your evening to come here. Currently, I've been a chief of police for the last 4 years in Tomball, Texas. It's a town of about 13,000 people just north of Houston. I've got about, I think, 68 police officers and civilians just doing absolutely phenomenal work down there, engaging the community, driving down crime, keeping people safe. And I couldn't be prouder of them. It's when people ask me what I'm proud of, it's that. It's the men and women who come to work every day and put on a blue uniform and a gun and a badge and try and do sometimes impossible job and do it well with grace and dignity. I spent 24 years in Los Angeles as a Los Angeles police officer, making my way from officer through the ranks of lieutenant to finally a staff officer. I had a ton of great assignments there, working Pacific Vice, working Hollywood Vice, working narcotics, working Valley Bureau gangs, and a couple FBI task forces. But really, I think the most rewarding task there was working with, they put me in charge of youth programs, all of youth programs. So I had about 8,000 kids that I was responsible for. It was terrifying, but I loved it. I grew the program. We got scholarships. We really worked on serving the underserved and the disenfranchised. Mostly, we saw our ratios of African American and Hispanic kids grow in our programs, and young women in our programs, our Explorer program and our PAL program, and watching those kids grow and become young, good citizens who look at the police department as a benevolent blue presence, much as I do. It meant the world to me. I've loved every day of being a police officer. I've loved what it's done. It gave me my family. I adopted my first two kids out of South LA because of things I saw as a young street cop in Los Angeles with kids who were in foster systems to drug-addicted parents, and I ended up marrying the right girl who was a little as crazy as me, and we're still together, and 4 daughters later, and it's just it's been a journey that being a police officer has formed how I'm a parent, how I'm a dad, how I'm a husband. I'd say this before I get into why Durango. Policing, I think for all of us, policing is a labor of love. It just is, and it's been that way my whole career. No matter what I thought, and the boyish reasons one joins the police to ride a white horse and put bad guys in jail. Truth is that still exists. It does. We still have an obligation to take people who are committing crimes and keep people safe. That is a fundamental duty. But it's so much more. When you speak tonight, I had the opportunity to speak to Megan, Moxie, and Chris from a local kitchen, and what they're doing with a unsheltered population who are suffering from mental illness, who are suffering from drug addiction, who sometimes intersect with crimes that our police officers get involved in. They're doing God's work. They're doing amazing things for this city and this town. So I wanted to thank them individually. They're just phenomenal people with a huge task. Why Durango? When I looked at it, I went to undergrad at Boulder, and I remember coming through here climbing or skiing and loving it as a young man, but more recently vacationing here with my wife every time. It is beautiful, and there's a lot of beauty in the world. California has its beauty. You come to a place and maybe live there because it's beautiful, but you stay because of the people. You stay because of a community who loves and cares and thinks and tackles problems one by one. I had a talk with some city leaders the other day, and they were adamant that this isn't necessarily a ski town. It's not just a vacation. It's a town. It's its own identity with its own train tracks and its own destiny. And that's really, really important. That's what's attractive to me. That's what I deal with in Tomball, Texas, which is right outside of Houston. And Houston's creeping into this little community and cutting down trees and building homes, and people are afraid. And our community's identity is so important. And this community, whoever you choose, this community needs to keep this beautiful, wonderful, thriving, and vibrant identity. The police department itself, when I looked at it, its strategic plan, I think your current chief copied me. I don't know how he did that, but community engagement and crime reduction right up front, then an emphasis on infrastructure, IT, and focusing on your officers' wellness, but right up front to lead with community engagement, even before crime. And then studying, as this department does, they are meticulously studying how they can drive down crime. That's wonderful. They analyze it weekly. They analyze it monthly. They publicize it in a very, in a great way. I'm kind of a nerd. I read about 180 pages of a 600 and something page police manual. Their use of force guidelines are spot on. They're best practices in the nation. They have a restrictive pursuit policy, which makes a heck of a lot of sense. Their complaint policy is absolutely open and transparent. This is a modern, thoughtful, well-run police department. I'd love to be a part of it. My last thing, why Durango? I said it was about the people, but now I got to change a little bit. Today I ran up Horse Gulch. I'm a runner. I'm clearly not a lifter. I can bench my own birth weight, like 6 pounds, 3 ounces. But I ran up Horse Gulch and got lost, and I could hear a elk bugling, and you don't hear that in Texas. They fry them, so it hurts their bugles. And then I saw a bunch of mule deer, a bunch of does going through the pasture a couple times with the yearling. And I thought, yep, this is why. Yesterday I did the river run. I saw these massive hawks fighting over breakfast. It's just beautiful. You people are in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and you all make it better. So thank you.
Tough act to follow. Jeez. I'm Ron Camacho. I am a current chief, 7.5 years. I'll start with why Durango. I have family that lives in Colorado. I lived here in the 90s, in Fort Carson, Colorado. This is where I learned how to hunt, to hike, to ski. You know, if you can't tell from my voice, I'm a New Yorker and have lived on the East Coast almost my whole life. It's where I found beauty, right? Most New Yorkers, most people on the East Coast, they don't want to leave, right? They're into that rat race, and they don't know the beauty that is the rest of the country. So I didn't forget that. I vacation here in Colorado. I have family that lives up in Milliken, son, his wife, grandchildren, and I look forward to spending more time with them and just enjoying the beauty that is Durango. 70 people applied for this position. That should tell you something. That should tell you, what a vibrant community you have, and also what a police department you have. I can tell you there's many jobs out there where they can't get 20 people to apply for a chief's position, no matter what the pay is. That the chief has done a great job, that the core of this department is healthy and is vibrant, is attractive to me. I don't want to come into a place where I got to spend years and years fixing problems. I see myself coming in and making some adjustments and just continuing the great work that the chief has done. There is an issue with recruitment and retention. I heard that loud and clear earlier when we spoke to the officers, and that's a major problem and a major issue that needs to be addressed in order for you, the public, to get great customer service. And that's something that I believe in wholeheartedly, customer service, making sure that the citizens of Durango and the people that come to visit, play, and live here get great customer service. If we can deliver great customer service, we can get the community to kind of back us and, be a part of us and help us during tough times. I'm huge into transparency, like many of the candidates said here, and being open and honest and just making sure that you see the good and the bad of the department, whenever that might happen. I'm proud to have been selected with such august candidates, and if something differentiates me from the rest of them is just the diversity of my career. I didn't spend all my time in one place. I jumped around. 18 years in a really tough, it's all relative from LA, but a tough city in Pennsylvania, and then going overseas as a police advisor, and then living in Mexico for a year, training Mexican police and supervising that. I got to see the corporate world a little bit during that time and brought those corporate ideas into policing. Then I worked at a college for a year while I was testing for chief's jobs, and then became the chief of Chambersburg in 2016. The community where I'm the police chief now, similar in size, many of the same problems, but there are differences. And what I've done there, the work that my team has put together, the development of that department, how we've engaged the community, how the community supports us, I hope to bring some of those ideas and philosophies here if I'm honored and selected by the panel to be the next chief. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And we're now going to move into the substantive questions. The first question will be asked of both Bryce Current and Jen Diederich. And Bryce, I'll give it to you first. It's a longer question if you need me to repeat part of it. And Jen especially, please ask. The question is, what diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are you willing to incorporate into your department, including hiring bilingual staff and providing training to your department regarding cultural competency issues? How aware are you? Yes. No, not a problem at all. Happy to repeat it. What diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are you willing to incorporate in your department, including hiring bilingual staff and providing training to your department regarding cultural competency issues? And then the second, the remainder of the question, there's a couple parts. How aware are you of the many immigrants that live in the area? What is your position in assisting immigrants and monolingual community members? The last part, what is your position in assisting immigrants and monolingual community members?
Okay, thank you, Greg. And before I start, I just want to, Jeff, I really appreciate what you said, looking into the police department and the work you did, because that is true with our police department. It's an amazing department, and I think that's what Chief Bramer's done so well, is being able to look ahead and see ahead, and that's what a good chief does. And it's really helped us over the past 5 years. So with this question, first of all, if you're a chief and you hear about bias or injustices or racial tension and you want to bury your head in the sand, then you've already made a big mistake. And I think that's what a lot of chiefs do around the country. And so you need to know what racial tension you have in your community and where it exists. And you have to listen. And you have to listen for the truth, no matter what the truth is, because we all want to hear our own truths. And so first and foremost, you need to know your community. And you need to know the values like I talked about earlier and be able to listen to those. How do you incorporate it? Well, I remember going to a training with Simon Sinek one time, where he just kind of popped in and spoke to us. And he spoke to us for about an hour, and we all just wrote stuff down just endlessly, and it was great. And when he got done, we were like, man, that was amazing. It's such a good class. And he goes, okay, you like that? Good, because you're not going to like the second half. And it was in a room full of chiefs. I was the only one in there that was not a chief because somebody dropped, and I was selected to go to this. And he says, you need to go make friends and alliance with folks in your community that you disagree with. And he talked about BLM specifically. And he got a big reaction out of the chiefs. And I was young in my career, and I was confused when I left there. We started to implement some of those things later in life, but it wasn't until I came to Durango. We started partnering with groups in the community, but we weren't super intentional about it yet. And like anything in life, you partner where there's the least resistance. And realistically, when you're walking uphill on a trail, that's when you know you're going the right way, right? But as humans, we like to walk downhill. And then George Floyd occurred, and we had the BLM protest downtown. Well, with that protest, we had counter-protesters. So what's our job? Keep the community safe, right? So we went down there to try to build a relationship that we had not already built. So there's zero authenticity with that. And if you're going to build relationships, you need to do it early, you need to do it often, and they need to be authentic, and they need to be real. And that takes investment. And as humans, we don't like to invest. We like to do what's easy again. And so one of the things we did, one of those nights, one of the speakers at the rally was threatened. And so we dealt with the situation. I went up and I talked to the speaker at the rally, said, are you okay? A lot of people were saying a lot of things that didn't happen. And I said, did these things happen to you? And he goes, no. And I said, well, are you okay? What did happen? He goes, somebody just at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was super empathetic and just a really kind soul. So we asked him, do you want to come to the police department, ask us some tough questions, and get to know our officers and see if we're doing things right? Because we heard his speech. And he said, sure. And he did. And from that, we formed, starting with him, a diversity, equity, and inclusion group. And the city was right on our heels to come in with another group. And however, we were able to have that group to begin with, and we've transitioned them into other groups as the city has filled that void and that gap. How aware am I? Well, our community complaint review committee consists of mostly people that have actually complained on the department. So we didn't go out and just pick a bunch of people that we think are going to throw us softballs. And one of those people was from Los Compañeros that talked about some issues with our cars that were unmarked, and that people saw things that, saw them parked and wondered if we were working with Homeland Security or ICE and if we were outside of our lanes. And if we don't have the trust of that community when something bad happens and there's a domestic violence or anything else, they can't call us, and they know they can't call us. So it's instrumental that we know who those people are and have those relationships. But it's vital that those individuals are able to, that we have trust with the leaders of those organizations, because who do they trust? And so, yes, we do know who in this town, who's sitting right here with us today, and others. That are able to spread that message for us and to gain that trust, because as I said earlier, trust is our fuel, and you can't feel safe in this community if you don't trust and aren't able to call the police. And then the last position in assisting, the last part, let me think, it was position in assisting
Immigrants and monolingual community members.
Okay, a lot of that's about diversity. I mean, we have the apps and we have the different programs, and dispatch helps us out, and I've called my brother at times, but, that knows Spanish, but that doesn't work. What you really need to do is have diversity in your law enforcement community. Your law enforcement team and your city team needs to look like your community and be like your community, and because it's a lot more than just the language to build trust. There's so much more to building trust in a community, and you need to start with that diversity, and you need to have folks there that are ready, and we've gone a long way with that, and we need to do better. We can continue to do better and have to so thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. Jen, would you like me to repeat the question? Okay.
I know. No, he was smart. He brought a piece of paper. I should have done this.
So-
Will you just do the first part first?
Sure. What
Thank you.
DEI efforts are you willing to incorporate in your department, including hiring bilingual staff and providing training to your department regarding cultural competency issues?
So one of the coolest things I ever got to do, and I was the sergeant for in the training division with Salt Lake City Police Department. I was an anti-bias instructor, and y'all may be shocked in here, but we all have bias. We do. It doesn't matter who you are. You have it because you're raised in one area or another area, right? And Utah, I'll just say this, is very well known for being very white. I mean, we are. And so I grew up in a high school that really didn't have any, it was all very the same, right? Very vanilla. The thing I found the most interesting in my life is I've really flocked to people who are different than me. I really enjoy the diversion, the difference of people, inclusion of people who aren't just like me, because I've learned so much from people who aren't just like me. I have two people I call my brothers, gay men, that I was there for when they got married, all those type of things. And it was so much fun for me. And I guess in my life, I never really understood why people didn't like other people because they were different. It just didn't make sense to me. And so going through my life as a police officer, I would hear officers say things about people, and I'm like, well, why do you care? Like, why did you not like that person who just walked across the street because they seem different than you? And honestly, it's not because the police are bad people. I think we have an education issue. And I've noticed in the last few years, there has been a huge push for bias training and making sure that we understand that just because someone's different doesn't mean they don't add value, right? And so when it comes down to bringing that into the police department, I'm all for it. I don't have a problem with it. I want the most qualified officer. I want the most qualified records person. I want the person who is going to come into the department and add value. And if they happen to be different than me, okay. I really, it is that simple to me. I might be weird, but that's just kind of the way my thinking is. I like different people that are different than me because I learn a lot. And for bringing it into the department, not everybody has to carry a gun. Not everybody loves being a police officer. Well, there's the group that came in. I really liked these guys. They were so cute. They came up and talked to me, and they're handling like the nonviolent crimes. Well, maybe that's, yes, I saw your smile. They're actually really cool. I like that program. But like, wouldn't that be a great place for someone to go in and help someone who's had a crime happen to them, and they don't necessarily want to talk to me because I'm carrying a gun, but someone who's a little softer to help them through it, who is a little more like them, who understands their culture. And that might be a great place to bring someone in who would maybe speak a different language or understand more of the diversity of this culture. Because I do understand, and I really didn't understand. I felt so bad. There was a lady that came in and asked me today, do you know what tribes are around? And I'm like, no. And I went out in my car and looked, and there's Ute tribes and things like that that I really didn't understand. I mean, I get it, but it just wasn't a focus for me. And for me, it would be, I would like you as the community, which is so cool. You're all here, like, please invest in me. If I'm going to invest in you, please invest in me, because I need to understand what you want from me. There's a quote out that says, you will get the policing you want, but we will also get the criminals we want. We have to work together, right? And so the training and bringing that into the department for me is just a no-brainer, really, in my mind. What was the second part? I know there's three.
Yes, what is your position in assisting immigrants and monolingual community members? I think you spoke to the middle one.
Yeah, to me, that just seems to be normal. This isn't the country I grew up in, in 1974, right? Things are just different. Things are changing, and you can either say, I don't like that, and go hide from it, or we can work with it, right? And invite people into our culture who are now our culture. I know that sounds weird to some people, but not everything is the same as it was, I hate to say it, next week, 50 years ago, right? And so, but my whole life hasn't been the same in 50 years. I love the idea of bringing new ideas in, inviting people in, and being friendly, because at the end of the day, none of us are getting out alive, right? We're all the same, we're all human. And so bring that into the culture. And if that takes, hiring a dispatcher that speaks a different language, or what we need to do, go out and recruit that from the communities that are speaking up. So if you're in one of those communities, and I happen to be lucky enough to get this job, please approach me. I'm very approachable, and I really do want to hear from you, because I need this to be your city, not just mine, right? And the third part?
That was it. You got it.
Okay, we did good?
You did
Okay,
good.
Got it
So,
done, okay. Make sure I
that was
answered
the
them all.
longest of the questions, and we do need to make up some time in order to get through the rest. So I'll just ask all of you to be a little more concise with your responses, but the questions are more brief, so that should come naturally. Back to you, Jen, for also this next question, and then also to Barrett Crum following. What experience have you had in dealing with homeless individuals in encampments, and how do you ensure your officers remain diligent about protecting personal property and other constitutional rights during camp removals?
Okay, I'll try and stay concise on this one. I have a lot of experience with it. Salt Lake City is huge when it comes to homelessness. We had a homeless shelter in the middle of the city and I worked like 7 years down there on a bicycle. And I'm going to admit to this, I was that officer in the beginning that was more about the force and, move them out and that kind of thing. And as you get older, you start realizing how many really cool people were down there. I've seen people get help down there, and we lost a guy for a year, and he came back and he was with a church and he was helping people out. And I've got a picture with him on my phone, and I was almost in tears. I was so happy to see him get help. Not everybody who's homeless There's a big difference. There are people who like being transient. They like moving from community to community, and there's as much you can do to help them. So that's more of a, I call it zero tolerance, but it's not as in arresting your way out of the problem. You can't arrest your way out of this problem. You just can't. But you can always approach. And I find it, if we are very friendly with the homeless and we talk with them, sometimes they're the ones who give us the best intel of what's going on in your city, because they know, they see the small things, they see the big things, and they can help you out. So if you're willing to work with them, sometimes they're more willing to do what you need to do to help them out, like moving an encampment that might be unsafe. I heard you guys had a flood on the river one year. Not every time you push a homeless camp to a different area is done because you just don't like the homeless. It's done for their safety. So my most experience is done, what we would do is we would have the health department come in when a homeless encampment got very dirty or, unclean for people to be in. You don't just push them out. Okay, you come in, we warn them. We actually would send counselors down there first to talk to people, try and help them with any kind of resources we could give them. If they didn't want them, of course, you're not going to force them on them, but they need to have the resources first. And then there would be signs posted everywhere that within a week we were going to come in and clean up the encampment. And so they had a lot of warning. So there was no, just I gotcha moments. We were walking in there and telling them, hey, we are going to move. And then the day would come that we would come in with personal property and things like that. And I understand this is all this person owns in this entire world is right there in that one tent, right? And if they abandoned the tent, then we scooped it up and of course it went away. But if someone was in a tent or they were in the area, we didn't just go in and just move their stuff. You let them know first, hey, this is the day, it's moving day, you need to take your stuff to a different area. And honestly, if you need some help, we had people come in who were volunteers with trucks to help them move things like that. So if it does come down to like an individual type thing where you need to move their property, there is a way you could put it in evidence, and this is something I'd have to work with the city with, but and of course our property people. But you can put it in evidence and hold it for a while to see if someone wants to come in and claim it. Hopefully there's a name on it, but that's always not so simple. But there is a way to do it, to be kind. There's a difference between policing your way out of a city and being kind, and that can be done with the homeless. It's not going to be an easy solution, guys. It's not, but there is a way to do it and still treat people with humanity.
Thank you. Eric?
I would just say ditto, but that wouldn't be productive. So being from Farmington, I could say ditto to a lot of things. Funny thing is, last week I received a call from a business owner where he's saying, hey, I have an extension cord going off my property down into the trees along the Animas River to an encampment. And so that starts a very similar process at our department, what Jen described. We have code compliance. We also have community officers that deal with certain areas of the city that go in and look to communicate with those individuals and give them notice so that we're not just picking up their property and moving them out. We want to be kind. We want to be forthright with them and help them understand that you're on somebody's private property. And so therein lies one aspect of it that is very similar to hers. On a totally different level, we have dealt with this problem for many years. When I first hired on, you would take the homeless people to detox for 72 hours, they'd get out, and then 72 hours later, they'd be back in, and it was a merry-go-round. And back in 2012, we developed the Joint Intervention Program, which involves collaboration between multiple entities of the city of Farmington, from Presbyterian Medical Services to San Juan Regional Medical Service to Farmington Police Department, code compliance. It also involves our court and many other entities that have now become involved in helping our homeless population move out of that population and into being a productive citizen. And I would tell you up front, no homeless situation will ever be resolved if there aren't homes for the homeless to go to. And that is a fact. You look at any research, if it isn't available, then they're not going to move on and thrive. But with our JIP program, we are seeing individuals that not only are homeless, but also alcoholics and have come out of both of those and go on to be better, productive citizens. And some of them even actually participate in our Joint Intervention Program, which provides a myriad of services, both for mental health, for alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and so many different services. And it's a campus that sits both on the borders of the city and the county, so the county is also apprised of it, and not just apprised of it, but involved in it. And so it's not a one-dimensional fix-all. And so providing services to where they commonly are congregating is important, because if they're moving across the city to where they're getting VA services or alcohol abuse services and counseling, you're just making it hard on them, plus your business owners, and making it difficult for everybody to understand where we're going and where we're heading. But when you move services and everything closer into a specific area, things can start moving in the direction, and you can start seeing other avenues to move to where you want to accomplish that end goal of moving a homeless person into a house or an apartment. I know that you're looking at a 120 apartment complex with a 30 to 60% AMI index on it, and that's great. Hopefully there are other avenues to help them get into those apartments. When you're dealing with property, it's very similar. If we've given ample notice and opportunities and can't make contact with them, we put it into safekeeping, and then we have our officers or code compliance do follow-up to see if they can make contact with them and let them know, hey, we have your property, can we help you and assist you in getting it back? And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And I think all of these things go together in helping keep the community moving in a direction where sometimes you have to help those that can't help themselves, but help them put that first foot forward in dealing with that problem and moving in the direction that helps them move to being a thriving citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrick. This next question is pretty straightforward. We'll probably be able to catch up some time. It's an administrative question, and I'll first go to you, Barrick, and then second to you, Jeff. And that is, describe challenges you encountered with procuring supplies, vehicles, and equipment at your current department, and what steps did you take to resolve them?
I'll use an example phone call I got this morning. I'm always on duty, unfortunately. So our vehicle procurement officer says, hey, all we can get is vehicles off of state contract. And one thing I've learned as a deputy chief, when people tell you no or there's no other way, there's always a yes. There is always a yes. And I told him, no, because you're going to just tell me I'm stuck with a specific vehicle and I know I can't get the quantity of vehicles that I want for that amount that I'm allotted. And if we buy off the lot, I can probably get one more vehicle. And he calls me back an hour later and says, I got you one more vehicle. Thank you. And so, you know, a lot of times when you're looking at procurement, there are guidelines for procurement, no doubt. But oftentimes we think there are no other strategies or options, but there are, and sometimes people just don't want to push themselves to work outside their comfort zone in finding the way to make it happen when it can. And that's something that just happened this morning, no lies. Thank you.
Hi. I think when we speak about logistics, in a sense, that really is one of the most important things a police department or any organization can do. How you know, in the military they say, is it going to be click or is it going to be bang? That's important. I mean, when we get our supply chains interrupted as we did in an unprecedented way during COVID, I absolutely agree with my partner. But I would add some of the strategies. The first and foremost is the relationship we have with our vendors. Being able to work with procurement if you're trying to get Chevys, and being flexible when it comes to cars. It might not be a Tahoe, it might be a Durango or a Ford Explorer, but having the inclination and the courage to be flexible and see that there are other options out there than what you're simply looking at. Secondly, both in Texas and the Los Angeles Police Department, I've had tremendous luck with grants. Grants sometimes carry strings, and we have to be careful. As you know, as city managers will always tell you, it's like, you know, okay, do we have to pay anything back on the other end of the grant, or can we do that? But I've been very, very cautious and been successful in successfully funded my canine unit entirely through a grant. Through all of our Narcan comes from grants that an ongoing grant. Our new gym in our police station is being funded through a grant. Then also we just got we have an uptick in some traffic crimes and traffic challenges, and I was able to procure a STEP grant, which is a federal program that gives money, and we were able to meet the match without giving any money back to the program. So I really believe when it comes to body cameras, there's an organization through the BJA, Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Department of Justice that has small rural tribal grants. And I was able to get about $80,000 toward our body cameras, the same body cameras that Durango uses, Axon. They're expensive and they're solid and they're great, but they're really expensive. So I would just say that the importance of working with forming good partnerships at conferences and meeting people at whether it's International Association of Chiefs of Police or Colorado Chiefs, talking to vendors, understanding their problems, but also working with your city family to get grants.
All right, thank you very much. This next question will be for both Jeff Burt and Ron Camacho. And Jeff, to you first. Please tell us about your experience and approach in holding members of the police department accountable.
Great question. I think accountability is absolutely one of the fundamental cores of good policing. Being able to look at discipline as a three-prong approach. When we hold people accountable, and usually in the form of some sort of punitive discipline, if I'm giving an officer a day off or terminating a dispatcher as I did last month, it really does serve three purposes. One, it hopefully modifies the behavior of the officer or the employee for keeping him or her. Two, it sets an example for other employees. Oh, if I do X, then Y is going to happen. But three, and most importantly, it's an expression to the community that police officers and police employees have to be held to an extremely high standard. And we have to be accountable to ourselves, to the people we interact with, and most importantly, we have to be accountable to the public. So I have always approached discipline. I've been in a very large union city where there were several rules and regulations to a small town in Texas where there is no union, and I would still look at it with my approach to my approach to holding people accountable is looking at and evaluating performance, attendance, conduct, setting clear expectations, having solid policies, guidelines, procedures, and rules in place, communicate those to people, and in whether it's in periodic ratings or monthly write-ups, as we do in my current department. Everyone gets a monthly write-up and a lot of positive, but we do that by, we hold people accountable by being very, very true to our policies and procedures. And then finally, it can never be overstated. We have to be and hold dear the Police Officer Code of Ethics, which is the page 2 of the Durango Police Department's police manual, and the core values of our organization. The same 7 core values on the wall back there that are the city's, those are our core values. And really holding our officers accountable, our employees accountable by talking about those in a meaningful way. Hey, Joe, how are you showing your teamwork today? What are you doing to do that? So it's a multi-step approach, but really as transparent as we can to the community, as honest and fair and upright and forward with our officers, and as inclusive as from new hires to the old, that we're all held to the same standard, an exceptionally high standard.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes, first and foremost, it has to be fair across the board, whether it's myself, and I live like a monk, right? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm in bed by 9, and just leading by example with that. And making sure that if it's a lieutenant that has violated something, he's treated the same way as that young officer. And that's the way you kind of build that accountability up and down the chain of command. So that's number one, super important, which is what what the chief said here, just making sure that it's fair, equitable, and everybody is under that standard, starting with me. Second, how do we let the public know that we're accountable? So what I do currently is in the yearly report, I let the community know this is the amount of use of forces we have, this is the amount of complaints. I don't put the officer's name out there in the complaints. I kind of give a little bit of a synopsis of what the incident was and what the adjudication was. And what better way to show the community, hey, we're being held to that standard. Last year, I had to discipline an officer, almost fired him, but he wound up getting like 30 days suspension. I had to explain that in that document. This year, I had an officer who was defending the migrant community from a citizen that was kind of a little bit racist. This officer was white. He didn't have his body cam on, and he violated our policy. So even though he did the right thing, he had to get disciplined, and we put that out there. And he accepted his discipline because, again, it's fair up and down the chain of command.
Thank you, Ron. And we're going to move into our last question, and this will go to both you and also to Bryce Current so that each candidate has answered 2 questions. And Ron, that is, if you are selected as the next chief of police for the city of Durango, what can the Durango community expect to see of you?
Yeah, somebody who's incredibly experienced, high energy. I'm a go-getter. I still have a ton of policing left in me, and looking forward to developing the officers to the best of my ability. I know the chief has done a great job. If I can push that up the ladder a couple of rungs, then I will have accomplished my mission. I think there's opportunities to engage the community, specifically with social media, and I've used that incredibly successful in my current position, and I think I would do that here, just understanding what the culture is of the city of Durango.
All right, thank you. And Bryce Current?
Okay, so, first and foremost, we need to keep operational legitimacy within the police department and nationally, and we need to be plugged in, state and national as well. One thing that I'm going to bring impact, but the impact is going to be through not being proactive or reactive with the community, but being coactive together. And, I think something I've learned, especially over the past 5 years working for Chief Bramer, is if you're a police department and you think you can actually drive crime down, then you're arrogant and you're wrong. You can only do that with the community in partnership. But not only in partnership with the community, but actual ownership, where people in the community are really committed as a team, one police department, one community, one team, and committed to the same goals. Then the community is going to work towards developing that trust with you, and there isn't a separation. And then you're going to have community groups call you out and do things with them. Chris and his group are here today, and we've helped each other, and it's that collaboration and corroboration that really gets results. And another key factor, I think, is partnering with the city executive team. And we're working on strategic plans right now, and they're strategic plans like I've never seen. I've been through tons of strategic plans, and they're just checking boxes. Hey, let's get this done, and then let's get back to our work. And this group that we're using right now, they're amazing, and it's going to actually become part of who we are. And realistically, it's going to get us at the police department and our city partners, our city team, and the community all speak in the same language. And if we can speak the same language, then we can really make a difference in this community. We were down here talking a minute ago about values, and I talked about policing with community values, and that means knowing what the values are, right, of the community. And they said, well, everybody has different values. Everybody has different opinions. So it takes a lot of investment and a lot of work to really work with your community. And you got to listen to things and listen for truth that you may not have those same, you may not share those same opinions. And lastly, I think we need to focus on measuring the right things. In the past, a lot of police departments take crime stats and they say, hey, we're doing really good. We're up on DUIs. We're doing it. We're killing it. Then come in the next week and be like, oh, we're down DUIs. We're killing it. There's no more DUIs. You could take stats, you could do anything with stats, but you got to measure the right things, and we got to focus on outcomes, and those outcomes have to go back to what our mission and our vision and our values. And then we need to get with the community again and see if our mission and our values align with their values. We're a home rule city, and we're here for the city. And so we might as well partner with the city. And like I said, one community, one team, and one police department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that concludes all of our questions for tonight. I personally would like to thank our candidates for really putting themselves out here and answering questions. It's not easy to be upfront and to be put on the spot, but it also is part of the job for which they're seeking. So they have a big day tomorrow. Thank you all for everyone attending, and thank you for all this great participation in the city of Durango.
Thanks, sir. Look forward to seeing you all in the morning.
Yes, sir.